The fourth episode of the 9th season is finally here, and it is time to see what new trouble and adventure our protagonists will get into. The first thing we see is Rick coming through a portal into the garage, returning completely drunk and totally out of it. Even though he has a super strong, modified body, it seems like he cannot handle another drop of alcohol. He stumbles from side to side until he ends up tripping over everything around him. A few seconds later, a smile washes over his face, and when we look down, we can see that he just peed his pants. Yet, he keeps on drinking, right up until the moment he ends up flat on the floor, close to a pile of broken glass. After this, he manages to crawl to his desk and turns on the computer. But despite making several attempts, he fails to enter his password correctly, and his computer warns him that a third mistake could be fatal. Rick tries to unlock it with his voice, but he is so wasted that not even he understands what he is saying. So, by mistake, he triggers an emergency lockdown protocol. In less than 2 seconds, all his tools, weapons, and everything available in his workshop get covered by a thick layer of metal and then protected by a laser system that would destroy anything moving inside there. With no other options, he has no choice but to call Morty and ask him for help. The kid shows up quickly and immediately notices the massive smell of alcohol everywhere. Because of that, he asks him if he would like to grab some breakfast, but Rick only wants him to help unlock the computer. Unfortunately, as soon as he gets close to the keyboard, he takes a massive electric shock that lets us see his bones light up just like a neon sign. Luckily for both of their moods, Rick gets a call, and it is Reese, which instantly puts a smile on both of their faces. They like their friend so much that they completely forget about the argument they just had, and Rick does not seem to care that his entire system is completely locked down. The only thing on his mind right now is getting out of there as soon as possible to meet up with Reese. The best part of all is that Reese appeared behind them 2 seconds later and only called to let them know he was about to walk in. That is just how cool he is. And the guys cannot stop jumping up and down with excitement, knowing they are about to have the absolute time of their lives. Right then, the scene changes, and when we come back, the guys are hanging out at a beautiful lake, fishing right next to their best friend. The first one to catch something is Rick, and it takes him no time at all to mock Morty for being a failure. But it turns out the kid just hooked something way bigger, making it really hard to keep the rod in his hands. But because of him, Morty gets distracted and loses the catch of the day. Later on, as the sun goes down, the guys build a campfire and get ready for a quiet dinner. But it turns out Morty forgot to pack the food, and Rick starts picking on him right away. It is only when Reese tells him that he should not be so hard on the kid, that not everyone is a genius capable of doing almost everything, and the important thing is to go with the flow and be kind to those we love. It seems Reese has the magic touch to make them get along and not fight so much, something nobody else had ever managed to do, putting Rick in a good mood. Now that is a huge feat. Unfortunately, a text message Reese gets on his phone ruins the whole trip, and he tells them he has to leave to take care of some important business. But the river isn't going anywhere, and they will be back soon. So the team heads straight back home, and Reese says goodbye, promising he will return after taking care of his stuff so they can finish their fishing trip. And Morty cannot help but ask him for a warm hug since he appreciates him so much. Right at the exact moment they are sharing a hug, a little opossum walks through the door and tries to steal their catch of the day. Right then, a bunch of lasers shoot out from Reese's back and blast the animal into a million pieces, while we can see that his eyes are glowing red and a robotic voice comes out of his throat. Before Morty can even ask him what the hell is going on and why he is talking like a robot, Reese's neck spins a full 360 degrees and some lasers completely scan the whole place, confirming that he is an android and not the true friend he appreciates so much. But the worst part of all is that Rick walks over and presses a button on Reese's neck, confirming that he has everything to do with this, or at least knows what the hell is happening. Morty screams at him that they have known Reese for many years, that he is a great friend, and that he does not understand why he would do something like this. This is the moment where Rick confesses that he has always been a robot, and he used him every time he was completely wasted, just to escape reality for a bit and come back fresh as a daisy. But he never thought Morty would get so attached to him. At first he wanted to tell him, but seeing how he looked at him, he decided to keep the secret. But now that he has found out the whole truth, they will never be able to hang out with Reese again, and he will have to invent a new prototype and try to introduce it into their lives at a moment when he doesn't notice. Rick adds that Morty has no idea how much work that actually takes, so he should be a little more grateful since he doesn't see him making any effort to make a real friend. Filled with rage and disappointment, Morty heads up to his room, stomping on the stairs to annoy his grandfather in the garage, and then throws himself onto his bed to scream into his pillow and let out all the anger he is feeling. From the kitchen, Rick can hear his grandson screaming and almost crying after finding out the truth. So, to drown out a bit of the guilt he feels, he starts drinking once again and doesn't stop until his flask is apparently empty. At that exact moment, Beth shows up and asks him, "How can such a small flask have so much liquid inside?" Rick confesses to her that it has a portal inside connected to a planet full of pigs that produce the best vodka in the galaxy, and he has a personal silo of millions of liters, so she shouldn't worry about him running out of supply. A few hours later, Morty decides to go talk to his grandfather, trying to understand what he did and why he did it. But as soon as he opens the garage door, he can see his friend Reese sitting in some kind of scanner. But that is not even the worst part. The worst part is that he is missing the top of his head and has electrodes hooked up to his brain. Rick shows up completely wasted a few seconds later and explains that he is trying to transfer some things from his brain before throwing it away and building a new model, making things a whole lot worse. While Rick messes with his brain, Reese talks to Morty just like he did a million times before, like a caring and attentive friend, except now he has his brain completely exposed right in front of him. Reese apologizes for going into robot mode in front of him because he didn't mean to scare him. Morty tells him that he wouldn't want to see him die, but he clarifies that he was never alive, that he is just a tool, and it turns out Rick had been using him to store all his passwords. That is why he always showed up whenever the system got completely locked down. To Rick, Reese is just an old wallet, and he will get a much better one soon. However, Morty is not about to let this happen. The next thing he does is shove his grandfather out of his chair, then types an incorrect password 3 times into the computer and quickly escapes through a duct before the system completely locks down, shutting Rick out of it. Both of them end up dropping down into a part of the lab that Rick does not have access to, and which he won't be able to enter without Reese, who is now completely out of his reach. Over the radio, Morty tells him that he won't let him destroy his friend, but Rick reminds him that he isn't alive, that he is just a program he uses to unlock his gadgets, and that he shouldn't have gotten attached to a machine. That is the #1 rule of robotics. So he orders him to open up the hatch right away before he ends up losing his patience, but Morty is not about to do that. Instead, the next thing he does is put a cap on his friend and switch him back to human mode so he can give him some good advice. Morty tells him that he deserves to be happy and not be used like a tool. So they are going to head down to the 17th floor, where there is a portal, and he will get to pick a world to live in and be happy. Plus, he promises he will never tell Rick where he escaped to. That way, he won't be able to follow him. Meanwhile, up in the garage, Rick is trying to use a high-powered laser to blast the hatch open, but it turns out his defense system is way too strong, even for him. The shot bounces off, goes right through the ceiling, and then we can see it streak through the sky at a crazy fast speed until it completely destroys a satellite out in outer space. 2 seconds later, we can hear a neighbor screaming in absolute fury that the TV froze up and he won't be able to watch the World Cup final anymore. Realizing he cannot open it on his own, Rick makes a call to a distant planet called Metallurgy, which is where he got the components to build his defense system, and tells the tech support creatures that he got locked out of his security system and needs immediate assistance. The alien creature tells him they could be there in 2 seconds. They just need a living vessel. So Rick walks straight into the kitchen to use Jerry's body for a moment. As soon as Morty's dad touches the phone, one of the creatures shoots through it as raw energy and takes total control of his body. However, when the expert checks out the security system, he realizes that Rick used the materials in his own way. Even though this security system is way stronger than anything they have ever seen before, the improper use of the materials completely voids the warranty, so they cannot help him. So, before taking off, the alien tells him that for over 3,000 years, he lived as a massless energy sphere, and now he can finally run and feel the wind, so he will give Jerry his body back in a little while, and he goes sprinting out into the street. Back with Morty, they find themselves at the door of level 17. However, they have to go through the prison, and things could get pretty dangerous in there. So he asks his friend if he can use the weapons he saw earlier whenever he wants, and Reese tells him they activate automatically, and they have no control over them. But if for some reason something tried to hurt Morty, then he could defend him. So Morty starts banging his head against the wall until the weapons activate, and the lasers blast a hole they can go right through. Once inside the prison, they notice that a massacre just went down, and all the prisoners are scattered across the floor, dismembered and destroyed. The only one left tries to grab Morty's foot, but Reese immediately obliterates him with his laser beam. Outside, Rick has built an entire rig to break through the hatch, but Beth is worried about Jerry. He hasn't shown up in a while, and Rick decides to keep his mouth shut, at least for now. Right then, we can see that Jerry is at a car wash, scrubbing his body over and over again to keep it completely shiny. On the other hand, Morty finally reaches the portal machine and asks Reese to pick the place where he would like to live. So he chooses a planet full of beautiful forests where he can fish for all eternity. However, when they step through the portal, they end up in a completely different place, filled with industrial buildings and pollution. The first guy passing by is some kind of talking pig who tells them that was how things used to be. But after the god in the white lab coat visited them, everything changed big time, and their planet now has progress. This is where Morty can see that the supposed god in the white coat is actually Rick, and he has an entire civilization manufacturing his liquor. Since the machine only had enough power for a single trip, that means Reese will have to stay in this awful place. At that exact instant, Jerry returns with some different materials, and then uses his alien power to trigger a sort of reaction that completely unlocks the security system, giving control back to Rick, who rushes to recover what belongs to him. But it turns out, Morty comes right out of the hatch and is completely alone. However, before Rick can make him pay for what he did, he has to take care of the bill from the Metallurgy Corporation, and all of this is coming straight out of Morty's allowance. Once Rick asks what he did with Reese, Morty tells him he will never tell him. He deserves to be happy. But a few seconds later, the whole system locks down all over again, and a video call comes through, showing us the pig civilization, which now has total control of all his systems, and is furious that he turned their beloved planet into a distillery. The pigs don't just have access to all his passwords. His weapon system belongs to them now too, and 2 seconds later, a turret pops up and starts blasting at them from every single direction. In a split second, the whole garage starts spinning frantically, and the pigs reveal that they are copying all his files, his weapons designs, and everything he has ever built. But since Rick isn't about to risk his own skin to stop them, he immediately sends Jerry out, shoving him out of the protective bubble to make him do something useful. Jerry gets the job done and destroys the turret, letting the guys escape the garage, but the living room is a total disaster. A machine made out of the couch cushions is attacking the girls, and they need to help them before it's too late. The couch can fire off a bunch of missiles, and Beth ends up getting hurt, but the really terrifying part happens a few seconds later when the whole living room floor turns into boiling hot lava. The family asks him why he would even build something like this, and Rick tells them that half the stuff he makes while wasted, so he has no memory of it now. A few seconds later, Rick gets a call from the leader of the pigs, who tries to mock him over the phone, but Rick uses this link to send the metallurgy alien back through the phone line to take over the lead pig's body, who then starts taking out his own followers, and the attack stops. The only thing Rick can hear are the agonizing screams of the pigs getting a lesson for their insubordination, but now it is a total mystery what Rick will do to get his vodka back. Maybe he will have to subjugate another innocent civilization. A few seconds later, the alien returns to Jerry's body, but that doesn't put an end to the bad news. Even though the lava recedes, the furniture is still alive and attacks them with no mercy, so the whole family has to team up as one single front to fight off the huge attack. According to Rick, the emergency shutoff is in his bedroom, but right at that moment, some razor-sharp blades drop from the ceiling and threaten to cut the family in half, so they have to hurry up. Everyone starts sprinting across the living room, where we can catch a sad glimpse of the times they spent with Reese, who is no longer part of the family. All along the wall, there are tons of pictures of happy moments, but they all end up ruined by the laser blasts coming from the furniture that has started chasing the family all over the house, and they need to turn them off before things get worse and catch up to them. Rick's room reeks of vodka and vomit, so the family begs him to hurry the hell up. They need to end the threat as soon as possible, or they could end up cornered and ripped apart. With just the flip of a switch, Rick shuts down the whole system, and now every single electronic device on the block has stopped working. So there is zero chance that any piece of furniture or shelf will attack them again, meaning you could say they are safe for the time being. And this is the perfect occasion to celebrate. Unfortunately, when Rick grabs his flask and takes the cap off, a laser beam shoots out from inside, revealing that the pigs have used the portal in the vodka reservoir to get to him. Little by little, the flask starts giving off a ton of energy and seems to warp, as if something massive is trying to burst out of it. And when this finally happens, we can see Reese wearing a pig t-shirt, having been completely turned to their side, and now he has his weapons at his disposal to take on Rick, the biggest enemy of the planet Pigdonia. Reese's protocols have been tampered with, and now he thinks Rick Sanchez is a dictator who deserves to be terminated. So the next thing we see is him firing a series of deadly blasts all through the house, wrecking a huge chunk of everything he touches. With the system completely dead and their defenses disabled, the guys have no clue what to do, so they start running for their lives all over the house until they reach the garage. But everything they throw in front of Reese, he just blows it away with a single shot. On top of that, his arms can detach from the lasers and be used to apply a massive amount of force. This gives him a clear upper hand during the conflict. When Morty finally goes down and is about to get impaled by one of the lasers, Rick jumps in the way and takes the deadly shot right to his back. Despite Rick's sacrifice, they are no match for his creation. The metallic arms are completely overwhelming and beat them until they are left lying flat on the floor, regardless of Morty's noble mission to remind him that they are partners and have traveled together. Second by second, Morty shares the moments of true friendship he shared with Reese, trying to reprogram him. But Rick screams at him that this isn't possible and that he better focus on dodging the blasts instead. Reese's protection system won't let him reprogram him with love. They need to come up with a new strategy, but the worst part is they cannot dodge all of his fast movements. There are only a few seconds left before Reese ends up killing them both. The next thing that happens is Rick and Morty get locked in a brutally difficult argument and start insulting each other, until all of this ends up causing a short circuit in Reese's brain, who goes back to normal. Morty assumes it was the great power of love, but Rick tells him his battery just died, or maybe it was a programming glitch. The main thing is that Reese ends up collapsing after telling them that they are an incredible duo and that he will miss them. Once he hits the floor, the whole garage finally unlocks and goes back to normal. Before anything else can happen, Rick grabs his friend's brain and immediately destroys it with the laser beam to make sure his passwords never fall into the wrong hands again. With the situation under control, the group gathers around for lunch, but Jerry is still an alien slug, and they have no clue when that thing will want to leave his body, since Rick cannot force it out. That is the exact moment when Morty comes up with a great idea, and they end up rebuilding Reese's body, but this time letting the extraterrestrial alien decide what to do with his own life. That is how they finally get it to leave Jerry's body. A few seconds later, when Rick gets access back to his computer, the very first thing he does is order a massive missile strike against the pig planet, so they learn their lesson. That way he can start completely from scratch somewhere else, giving us the big finale of the episode.